Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining our presentation on Open Pedagogy in Action, Students' Perspectives on Authoring a Textbook on Language Learning. My name is Keli Yerian. I am a distinguished teaching professor in the linguistics department, and we're all here from the University of Oregon. You'll be hearing from all of us in this presentation about the materials that we created. We are a team of 5 undergraduates, 1 graduate student, and myself as a faculty member. And we created materials for a core education 100 level class at our university called Learning How to Learn Languages. So this is our story of how we did that from our perspectives. You'll notice that there is an image on the left side that is an example of one of the materials that we'll be talking about in this presentation. And I'll note also that we are recording this in mid-June because that's the time that we could all get together for this, but we are publishing these materials in mid-September, which will be in time for this conference. So I'll go ahead and let everyone else introduce themselves now.
Hello, everyone. My name is Faith Adler. I'm currently a junior at the University of Oregon studying Japanese and language teaching as well. And I'm so excited to present this information today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Halima. I'm an international grad student from Pakistan in Language Teaching Studies program at University of Oregon. And I've been working as a project manager and co-creator on this project in the capacity of graduate employee.
Hi, everyone. My name is Logan Fisher. I am a freshman at the University of Oregon studying general music and linguistics.
Hey everyone, I'm Cameron Keaton. I'm currently a senior at the University of Oregon studying political science.
Hello, my name is Abhay Pawar, and I'm currently a freshman at the University of Oregon, and I'm studying advertisement and media studies.
Hi, I'm Addy Orsi, and I am majoring in linguistics and communication disorders and sciences.
Great. So we'll go ahead and continue. I'll give an overview of our presentation today. Faith will be talking about the purpose of our project. I'll then back up and talk about the origins of the project. Logan will be talking about the content of our materials. Abhay will talk about our processes over the last 6 months. Addy will be talking about students' content and roles in the project. Cameron will be talking about how these materials can be used in the future. And Halima will be finishing up with considerations and takeaways that we have from this project. And we'll get a quick last lightning round of thoughts from all participants at the end. So I'm going to turn it over now to Faith to answer the question, what is this project all about?
Yes, absolutely. So I want to start today with a quick question. Do we really think that students can write a textbook? Like, do they really have the knowledge, the skills, the repertoire to be able to write a textbook? So begging this question, naturally we'll ask, what is open pedagogy and why should we create it? So the idea behind open pedagogy is that students are not simply passive consumers of knowledge, but that they also are constantly producing knowledge and can produce a wealth of that knowledge from their unique experiences. It's part of the open education initiative, including use, adaptation, and development of various open resources and methods of experimental learning that focus on students as active creators and sharers of information, and not simply as passive consumers of that information. And so, in other words, this resource is not only intended to be consumed from anywhere in the world, but also be a super open resource for anyone to pull from in the future and hopefully to learn from. So for us, we had some highly visible results of this open source living textbook, as we like to call it, as it will consistently be updated with relevant information throughout the years. But we also had a ton of not so visible results that are super important to the idea of open pedagogy, such as finding a community of like-minded and passionate team members, developing our creative and academic minds. We grew our interpersonal and intrapersonal skills, and we contributed to the growth of open pedagogy and created just this new idea for hope and yeah, just the growth of the future of pedagogy as a whole. So I wanted to show you this little chart that kind of touches on the attributes of open pedagogy. And as we look around this wheel, I think that anyone speaking today would not be being honest if they said that we didn't all feel every single aspect of open pedagogy mentioned in this chart. As we went throughout this experience, we definitely all felt these in one way or another. So I wanted to give a couple of examples of some smaller scale examples of open pedagogy, as open pedagogy can stretch from, you know, adding a new Wikipedia page or even editing a Wikipedia page to things like creating guides and how-to websites, annotating public domain materials. There's a lot of examples listed on this list, but we also had quite a few examples of open pedagogy in a smaller scale throughout our entire textbook. And this includes things like various quizzes, various interactive materials. So not only are we able to produce this large-scale project of the learning resource as a whole, but also a lot of small examples of open pedagogy produced by students throughout the textbook. And then finally, we wanted to offer this example of what the process of open pedagogy might look like for those who are interested in the future. Starting off with analyzing and classifying current assignments, stepping into considering meaningful OER contributions, selecting tools and repositories, designing intentional negotiations for openness, and finally, finalizing and reclassifying the assignment. And now, I wanted to share at a glance what this textbook is for. This will be touched on a little bit more in depth later in the presentation today, but just as a quick run through, this was initially began to consolidate learning materials for a current class at the University of Oregon called Learning How to Learn Languages, where we touch on not only the theories and strategies for learning languages, but also some of the work that goes behind that, like different general learning strategies, ways to change our mindset. It's kind of the background of language in a lot of ways. We hope to lower the barrier of education and cost and accessibility to not only students at University of Oregon, but also people literally all over the world, anyone that might happen to come across this material. We wanted to provide a different approach that prioritizes interactivity, accessibility, personability, transparency, and relevance, and showcase all of the wonderful and whimsical ways that language affects its learners. And finally, I just wanted to note that none of this would be possible, of course, without the amazing research and love and work that goes into this field that is not only done, of course, by people that are working on open pedagogy. So none of this would be possible with all of that work. So this is not to say that we should be replacing normal pedagogy in the classroom, but rather that we ask to, question, where can I include open pedagogy in my classroom in order to best benefit my students? And with that, I will pass the baton and ask Dr. Yerian, where exactly did the idea for this come from?
Great. Thank you so much, Faith. Yes, so the origins of this project, I'll say a little bit about that. I am a teacher educator here at the University of Oregon, and I've always been interested in thinking about learner-directed and learner-shared curricula. So that's a little bit of my own background coming into this situation. I also started teaching Linguistics 144, which is a core education 100 level class. It did not have a central textbook yet. We did not have a set of materials for it. I looked for some, but didn't find them. I was contacted at the same time by a few publishers to write a text about language learning, and that shows that they also were looking for similar materials and that there's kind of a gap in the literature out there for this kind of textbook. At the same time, I started participating in an OER workshop that was sponsored by Open Oregon Education. And that is where I discovered open pedagogy and found that open pedagogy is really a perfect convergence of learner-driven pedagogy and open education resources. So I thought, what better way to fill the gap of the need for materials for this class than to engage with open pedagogy. I could have started small, but decided to go big and create the whole text. I felt like this course was a perfect fit for student-generated materials because it's not focused on a lot of technical information, but more about student perspectives and experiences that they've had with language learning. And it's the focus of this course is really to motivate people to monitor and celebrate their own language learning. So it was a good fit for open pedagogy in particular. I applied for and was awarded some grants to support the project, primarily a large internal grant at the University of Oregon, and then also a state level grant through Open Education. Halima, our graduate student, agreed to be the project manager and co-creator here, which I'm very thankful for. That was very important for the management of this project. She and I educated ourselves more on this open pedagogy idea and planned the project during fall term and winter break. We interviewed 10 former Ling 144 students and selected 5 of them in winter break. And importantly, the grant allowed us to pay students to do this work. And I felt like this was important from an equity perspective to not just rely on students who were able to pay for additional credits or to volunteer, but to actually compensate it with pay for this first edition. Future editions will not be paid for, though. They will be woven into the course processes in each cohort. We also arranged support ahead of time to kind of be sure that things would be set up well for success by using help from our OER librarian, Rain Vieger. Also, we had a mentor from somebody who had done this kind of project before, Liz Pierce. We took advantage of the Holden Leadership Center here at the University of Oregon, who gave workshops on project management and leadership styles. That helped us out quite a bit. And then at this point, we really turned it over to the students to start making decisions. And so I'll turn it over now to Logan to ask, what is the content of this project, Logan?
Hi, everyone. I am so excited to talk to you about the contents of the book. So when we first started talking and started meeting, we said, this is too much for 10 chapters. But after a lot of thought, we finally agreed on some core materials that we wanted to discuss. As this textbook is the central material for Linguistics 144 at the University of Oregon, each week of the course corresponds to a chapter. Each chapter has sections, and the quantity varies from chapter to chapter, but each chapter has an intro, outro, and main sections that cover topics like metacognitive strategies, language revitalization, and more. So week 1 covers language and learners. It's largely an introductory week with conversations like who is a language learner or what is a polyglot? And a polyglot is a person that speaks many languages. The goal was to be big picture and break down big misconceptions before we dive into deeper content. And this chapter was written by myself, Abhay, and Halima. Week 2 is a little more broad, language, learning and languages, with much of the class material being about various learning theories and more. I wrote the corresponding chapter, and with this chapter, I wanted to dive into things that should be actively taken into consideration when a learner is learning, and especially with learning independently. Independently, learners can make active decisions about how they learn, so giving them information so that they can make informed decisions was important to us. Week 3 of the course covers motivations, access, and power in language learning. This was important for us to keep in the book because one of our guiding principles is inclusivity and uplifting underrepresented or suppressed voices. Cameron headed the chapter that includes key information about what a majoritized or minoritized language is, standardized language in the classroom, and language revitalization. And then these are all important factors that influence which languages and which cultures are valued and promoted around the world. So Cameron said that he wanted to write this chapter because he wanted the reader to understand the global power and access implications of any given language. Intercultural Communication and Pragmatics is authored by Faith, incorporating elements that highlight her personal experience being a Japanese exchange student. And pragmatics here, well, pragmatics in language talks about language use and context specifically. So Faith said that she felt that it was really important to talk about the variety of ways in which people live their lives around the world, and that all of these deserve consideration, observation, and respect. And the last of the chapters that we wrote in winter was metacognition. And this was written by Addy, Faith, and Cameron. We wanted to discuss metacognition to promote that students reflect on their own language learning process, since metacognition is the act of consideration of one's own thought process. The last 4 chapters that we decided on were reading, writing, speaking, and listening chapters, or the 4 pillars of language. And this was a controversial topic among the team because in the class, they were divided into presentational, interpretive, and interpersonal skills. So we had a little bit of a disagreement about how we wanted to organize this, but eventually we decided to separate them into their own chapters and then tie them all together at the end. And then our final plan for the project is one last chapter, which corresponds to week 10 in the class. And we all said that, we want chapter 10 to tie this together and to connect them and say that complete language is not independent. It's not just speaking. It's not just writing. It's really all of these all together. So the conversation of chapter organization has been very prominent. In a book with so many authors, there's bound to be a plethora of ideas, of opinions, of skills. We started by each writing our own chapters in solitude, garnering ideas as we went for various interactive activities or stories we want to tell. And eventually we decided that we needed to set parameters for each chapter that creates some unification without compromising our artistic voices. And those parameters are as follows. At least one multimedia project per chapter, and this ended up largely being videos such as one of myself talking through a day in my life as a polyglot, chapter goals and I can statements to set an idea of what the reader should be looking for in the chapter, resources at the end of each section and footnotes, and finally quizzes through H5P to show comprehension, and Addy will define H5P later. Because we are using an online platform to publish, we wanted to take advantage of the tools available to us and create something that hasn't been created before. We didn't want to just write. We wanted to tell stories that are valuable and that students needed to hear. Lastly, I invite you to look at the screen. I don't know why you wouldn't be already, but this is just what the chapter organization will look like in Pressbooks. And how did this process look specifically after we got all of these ideas, Abhay?
All right, yeah, let's talk about our process in creating this textbook. So creating a textbook for us students, even a graduate student or a professor or anyone really, is a big and somewhat daunting project. So a question I'm sure we all have is how you all might have is how do you even begin? So here's 6 sort of key points for our entry into this project. As previously mentioned, we borrowed a lot of our content or the scaffolding for it from the Ling 144 class. And that just gave us an outline. It's a lot easier to start with an outline than with nothing, even if everything changes at the end. Next, we have the nature of what a textbook needs. Well, none of us have done this before. So we needed to sort of get used to it, a little acclimatization period. And yeah, we'll bring that point up later. We also got leadership workshops as at the Holden Center, which was previously mentioned. And this was a really good way for the team to sort of get to know each other in the beginning stages and sort of know how we all work as a team, and also to ourselves to know how we are as leaders and work within a group. We also got introduced to the possible digital elements. Of course, this is a digital textbook, so there's quite a bit of things that we could do, especially with H5P, which again will be brought up later. We had group meetings. We started to plan our group meetings, and that's a whole thing. We'll get to that. And now work division. This is probably the most interesting part, in my opinion, as the way that we initially decided to divide our work became a little bit problematic. So the way that we decided to divide the work was each person would author a chapter. We split the 10, 5, and 5, and each person would do one of the chapters. which would entail that person doing just a little bit of everything. So on the next slide, we can see what that everything was. So for the first 5 weeks, we pretty much did a lot of research, writing, some multimedia stuff, and meetings. For research, we used search engines and used cited and published work. In the spirit of OER, we also used some OER content, but we did not remix the OER content that we used. Next, we have writing. We all wrote a little bit for our chapters, or we all wrote our chapters, and we'll see an example of that in the next slide. For multimedia, we were still getting used to it. It takes quite a while to get used to it. So just sandbox and learning. And for our meetings, we divided them into small and big meetings. So our big meetings, we have one of those a week. And that was a time for us to sort of talk about, things that we needed everyone in the group for, decisions that we had to make, and the overall sort of trajectory of where we were going each week. And our small meetings, we also had one a week, and we had small groups based off of scheduling availability. And these meetings were more personal, and we came up with like personal to-dos and how to get to our to-dos in a nice step-by-step plan, which Halima was awesome with. So that really helped us out as a team as well. So on the next slide, we have some examples of that free writing that was mentioned earlier. Yeah. So as mentioned before, the process was a little bit problematic. So what was the problem? We realized that our linear workflow was just not the best use of our skills. So we decided to go into specializations. We changed our meetings. So now we still had our big meeting, except it was just longer. So we had more time to talk about the things that we needed to. And instead of having small group meetings, we changed it to have a one-on-one meeting with Halima, which was all the benefits of a small group meeting, but even more so since it's just one-on-one. So it was an even better and more refined way of knowing that we could get our stuff done when we needed to. We understood the elements that we needed now, and because of that, it helped with our next point, which is we had carryover work in between terms. So because we kind of knew what we needed and we knew how much time it would take and this and that, that kind of gave us our cushion to have carryover work, which wasn't planned for, but it definitely wasn't problematic. And then eventually we transferred our drafts to Pressbooks, which was a really huge step as we kind of got to see a finalized sort of version of what our book would look like. And that helped us make a lot of decisions about formatting and other things. Yeah, and also our peer reviewing became a lot easier on Pressbooks, as you'll see in the next slide. Yeah, here, there's a other program here called Hypothesis, and you can just sort of highlight and put comments in like you would with other text software, but having that, everyone have access to that at the same time was incredibly helpful for peer reviewing. So now we're just wrapping things up. We've hit this phase of repetition in the last couple of weeks, which not in a negative way or anything. We just were really doing our work over and over again. Our meetings got more intensive. They got longer. We kept realizing we didn't have enough time to talk about things, so we just kind of extended them. And now we're just finishing up some of our final elements. There's a little bit of writing that needs to be done, some crowdsourcing, and a few media elements that are still being worked on. And over this summer, we'll just be refining and touching up on our textbook. So yeah, now I'll pass it over to Addy, who will talk more about what our switch was and our roles as a team.
Thank you. So initially, all of the members on the team contributed. Well, all of our members have contributed throughout all of the chapters, but our roles haven't always been so interconnected. Initially, as Abhay said, we decided to write one chapter each, and then we also decided to support one other person as a co-author on their chapter. But then after a few weeks, we found ourselves wanting to contribute in additional or contrasting ways. And by automatically assigning everyone the author role, we didn't consider our individual skills and strengths that would be most valuable to the creation of this resource. So we shifted into exploring our interests and fell into different roles. And this allowed us to really work globally on the project and all of its elements rather than a singular topic as we would if we were authoring one chapter. So we decided to have different focuses such as writing and research, videos and multimedia, and then visuals and illustrations. And with these specialized roles, we were able to make creative mini projects and different features to support the resources text. And these contributions make the resource stand apart from traditional textbooks. They encourage a more relatable learning process for future students. But not only that, future cohorts will be able to incorporate their own similar projects and keep the resource relevant and dynamic, which will be talked about in the future. And so these contributions could not be more invaluable. And so we have all created and worked extensively on different features. Faith and Cameron worked on research and writing. They worked on multiple chapters, including culture, the role of access and power in language learning, metacognition, and some chapters about language learning skills. While focusing on writing, they each conducted different interviews. Cameron interviewed a Spanish heritage speaker to include as a video in the chapter about role and access of power. And Faith interviewed former exchange students about their experiences with culture and intercultural competence while studying abroad. And those will be added as case studies throughout the culture chapter. So Logan also wrote and researched while pursuing video and activity creation. Their work included different videos to support their writing, such as an explicit and implicit learning video with Faith teaching Japanese words for fruit, and this video of a Punjabi conversation between Abhay and Halima. This video was a collaborative project with collaboration between Logan, Abhay, and Halima, and they were able to script, film, and direct this video, which will be used to help explain the cognitivism learning theory. Along with these videos, Logan created interactive activities to review the content and concepts in the videos and text. Continuing on interactive activities, Abhay focused mostly on interactive H5P activities and multimedia support. H5P activities are a way for students to engage with the material within the resource. They're embedded features and include quizzes, drag and drop, mini presentations, etc. Abhay has collaborated with all of the members to create relevant videos and activities such as the Spanish Heritage Language Program interview and the Punjabi dialogue video. His interest in media creation and his experience with filming and editing has allowed this resource to become more than just a textbook. I worked on visuals and illustrations, and I used my skills and experience in art to illustrate key concepts that otherwise may be difficult to understand. This illustration depicts a culture iceberg, which compares the visible parts of culture with the less visible parts. Additionally, the use of visuals promotes a more accessible learning resource with the consideration of the variety of learning styles and types of learners here at the UO and anyone else who may learn from this book. Additionally, throughout this creation process, Dr. Yerian and Halima have provided guidance and support. Halima has worked as our project manager and a co-creator, and she meets with each student collaborator to help us continue to make progress. She also works on the technical side of our writing, such as locating resources, checking for accuracy, and citations and attributions. She has also contributed her own writing to the resource as well. And Dr. Yerian, of course, was the one to propose this resource and project as a whole, and she has been a mentor to all of us and given us the space to grow as learners. She has given us guidance, direction, and feedback on our tasks, and has connected us with resources and people, as said before. And her expertise, experience, and vision have helped make this project what it is. And with their support, the roles we have now best align with our skills and interests and allow us to most effectively work on different topics and concepts taught in this resource. If we were to have continued writing one or maybe two chapters, our result would not be as cohesive and potentially not as well-rounded as it is. So that's where we are now. But Cameron, what will this resource look like in the future?
Thank you, Addy. So how will this project be used in the future? So one of the main goals was growing a community of like-minded individuals. And we're not only doing that with this cohort, but with future cohorts. Another thing that's very important to remember is what future iterations will look like. They will be on the same material, but they will be molded in different ways because there'll be different co-authors and different contributors. And speaking of different co-authors, contributors, things along those lines, there'll be opportunities for students in the Linguistics 144 class to do smaller roles for credit and things along those lines, because we mentioned it probably won't be compensated with money. And the future student contributor experience that really stood out to me is being able to do smaller roles as well as bigger roles, which is something that'll definitely be helpful. Something future students could also do is they could let us use their work from the course, and this work could enhance the material. This right here is a story that a student gave, or we're asking a student to use in this year's iteration, but in future editions, students can definitely, or it would be nice if they let us use their work because it would definitely enhance the material. And how could this experience positively affect the student? So my experience was mostly as a writer, and I also did a little bit of interactive activities. And it was the first time I had to write in like a publication sense. In the past, all my papers have been just essays and things along those lines. So this was an opportunity for me to write in that sense, which was way different than anything I've ever done before. It also gave me a chance to immerse myself in the Linguistics 144 material because like I never really had that chance to like work through it, and I worked through it for a couple of weeks, or I worked through it for 10 weeks on the first run through on the class, and now I have the chance to work on it for 7 months. So it definitely gave me another chance to see the material in a new light. And I had an amazing chance to not only learn from faculty and GEs, which is something I've done in classrooms, but also I could learn from my peers because we would have meetings every week and I would speak with them in ways that I've never really spoken with my classmates. And lastly, something I've also noticed is how these skills are not only beneficial for continuing on with your educational experience because of the writing skills and things like that, but they're also very beneficial career-wise. And if you have graduate school aspirations, this is definitely an opportunity for you to pursue those skills when you may not be able otherwise to. And now I've talked about my takeaways. Now we're gonna look at the overall takeaways with Halima.
All right. Yeah, in this part of presentation, we are going to talk about our takeaways from this project that will be considerations for people in audience who might be interested in doing similar kind of projects. Overall, I would say this project is a huge success and speaks for how much learners are capable of. But at the same time, we had our tricky spots on this project where we reflected upon our process and felt a need of addressing them. I have 3 main points in this part of presentation, and that are our 3 main takeaways. The first one is time. Yes, the ticking clock. It has been the trickiest spot for all of us because of our limited time on this project and grant. Secondly, our student team members, including myself, are full-time students, and our supervisor, Dr. Yerian, are full-time faculty. So with our full-time commitment as students and faculty, this project was a significant responsibility. In short, we have been juggling classes, work commitments, and personal obligations. And to add to that, the tasks on this project are highly creative, including writing, creating illustrations, multimedia elements, editing, etc. All of these things and tasks are time consuming. So time is an important consideration to keep in mind for this kind of project. But having said that, I would like to emphasize the bright side of this project. Despite our limited time on this project, this project is a huge success, and we made significant progress throughout our time. And there were certain things that actually helped us to address this challenge. The first one is our regular meetings. Every week we were meeting at least twice, once as a full-time, once as a group, and as for the second time it was as an individual. They would have meetings with me. So this helped us to have open communication with all team members. Secondly, talking of flexibility, we felt in need of being flexible on deadlines as well, considering our varying workloads and commitments with studies. Also, I would like to say our students showed huge commitment to this project and went beyond traditional assignments, even with this time constraint. Our second key point to focus here is something that I would like to call uncertainty, what to do and what not to do. So this was a kind of challenge that we were already aware of. So it would be a lie if I say that we were not ready for that. As Dr. Yerian mentioned in the beginning, that before starting this project, we started educating ourselves on this project. So this was a kind of like heads up given by people an expert in this field. For example, we read a paper by a person who supported us on this project as a mentor, Liz Pierce. And this is what she says in her paper, that the practice of open pedagogy may evoke feelings of pride, discomfort, self-confidence, vertigo, and more, both for students and for educators. And this was us too. For example, Addy and Abhay already have explained that how our students shifted their roles and kept exploring. So in the beginning, it took us a while to explore their interests and their roles. I mean, there can be several factors to this, but it is important to note that 3 of our student team members here are first-year students and first-year students in college. And first year in college can be all about figuring out and exploring. And in one of our informal meetings with one of our team members, Logan, they affirmed it, they confirmed it, and said that the experience of being a freshman has been the experience of figuring out. Secondly, our students were so much dedicated to the quality of this work. They felt the responsibility of sharing information that is not misleading and that is credible enough for future students to use it. There was support around information and resources, but we always found our students in need of reassurance on information. Again, in our informal meeting, Faith confirmed that and said, decision-making around information felt like huge responsibility. So in short, this was a tough nut, and I would like to share how did we crack it. So first of all, this open pedagogy approach is actually in contrast to traditional pedagogy. It challenges it. For example, in traditional pedagogy, we have static models that we apply to everyone alike without differentiating. For example, if there is a quiz or some assignment, it is for everyone, and everyone is supposed to do that. On the top of it, traditional pedagogy is highly timed. But in this project, or following this approach of open pedagogy, we had the room to create an environment for students where they can explore their interest and do something creative. For example, in traditional pedagogy, students read case studies, but in open pedagogy, students are encouraged to author case studies, and this is what our students did. In traditional system, all students are given same quiz, but in open pedagogy, students create quizzes, and this is what our students did in this project. Our students created a lot of interactive activities on Pressboard based on readings and topics given to them for writing. And while cracking this tough nut, again, our regular check-ins helped us to have open communication, address this, and keep in mind that this is a kind of challenge, or this is something that we are experiencing and we need to address it. And in short, I would say we trusted and recognized our students' skills and voices that empowered them as an autonomous learners. Our third consideration is around feedback support. That I would say feedback really plays a very integral part in open pedagogy. On this project, we had several rounds of feedback on writing, but we feel that this feedback loop could have been like stronger. We could have given them some writing workshops, or besides writing, we could have connected them with other centers on like multimedia parts or illustration components or other things. So this feedback was, I would say that this is a takeaway from this project, that feedback is an integral part of open pedagogy. First of all, it increases engagement of learners with the content. For example, we had several rounds of feedback on their work, and in this way, learners do not just look at their work once, but twice, thrice, and multiple times. That increases their critical thinking skills as well. Also, feedback does not necessarily come from one person, like instructor or supervisor, but from peers or people from outside. So in addition, it gives them a lot of diverse perspectives and significant opportunity to collaborate with others and expand their network. For example, I would like to highlight again that we had support from our library at University of Oregon. Reen Wieger supported our students and all of us in understanding copyrights issue and license science. Secondly, we connected one of our learners with an LTS student at University of Oregon who previously GE'd in Lang 144 for writing support. So I would say that feedback is like a bridge to so many things, to knowledge, engagement, critical thinking skills, collaboration, network. So these were our takeaways and some advice for those who are interested in exploring open pedagogy.
Thank you so much, Halima. Let's have a few comments from everyone about last takeaways and last thoughts about the project from team members. So we could start with you, Faith.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this project as a whole was so incredibly empowering, and it just really made me realize the power of research, the power of students, and it's just inspired me in pursuing a future career in research and education, and yeah, just overall such an empowering project.
I'd say my biggest takeaway from this has been that open pedagogy and open education is really just a human movement that empowers people outside of just the creators.
I would say that my biggest takeaway was the fact being able to work with like-minded individuals who love the same stuff I do.
Not to sound redundant, but empowerment was such a big part of this. We all the students, well, we made a textbook, and that's really cool.
For me, this project has allowed me to make very meaningful connections with my peers and faculty and GEs.
For me, I would say this experience has been an experience of being an open learner and open educator. Open is a very important word in open pedagogy. And thanks to this experience of openness, that added a lot to my knowledge, skill set, and gave me acceptance towards differences among learners in education.
And for me, I would say as a faculty member, it was just such a joy to step back and not have control over everything, and to give the control over to learners and just be wonderfully amazed at what they could produce when given the chance. So it was a fabulous opportunity for me for that as well. So we'll go ahead and finish here with that and just give some quick acknowledgements here to the grants that we received and some of the people who helped us. We also have references for open pedagogy here and some key references that students were using for creating this project. And I'll close off here by saying thank you for your attention and leaving you with our emails here in case you would like to contact us with questions about any of this, or starting any kind of discussions or follow-up information. We'd be happy to provide. So we'll sign off and say thank you very much for listening, and we hope you enjoy getting engaged in open pedagogy in the future. Bye-bye, everyone.